Vietnam veterans and their families face growing concerns as more and more Vietnam War veterans are now part of the aging population of Americans ages 65 and older.
Vietnam veterans now are approaching or already are in their prime risk years for Alzheimer's disease.
Dr. George Grossberg is the Henry Amelia Nasrallah Professor of Geriatric Psychiatry.
We know that the veteran population is aging quite rapidly, that they're of that era, that they've served as soldiers in one capacity or another in Vietnam. Those that did have a lot of risk factors as they're getting older. One thing that we see quite often is post-traumatic stress disorder, PTSD, with nightmares, all kinds of, terrible symptoms of PTSD, which we now think, and there's some evidence, may be a risk factor for the later development of Alzheimer's disease.
As a geriatric psychiatrist, Dr. Grossberg treats patients through the SLUCare Physician Group with SSM Health.
Geriatric psychiatry is psychiatry for people over the age of 65.
There are Vietnam veterans and their families seeking his help, taking that first step into the interview room. And when they do, it's not just the post-traumatic stress disorder that's worrisome.
The other issue that these veterans face, besides aging, PTSD being a risk factor, is that many of them had exposure in Vietnam to napalm and other toxic chemicals, that these chemicals are neurotoxic, that they could cause toxic effects, deleterious effects, bad effects on the nervous system in general, as well as on the brain, potentially being an additional risk factor for an increased risk of developing Alzheimer's disease. So it's a double whammy.
Over the years, research reveals more risk factors for Alzheimer's disease and other forms of dementia. PTSD may top the list for aging war veterans now and in the future, but Dr. Grossberg says depression is another big one.
It's one of the things we've done some work on, depression as a risk factor for Alzheimer's disease. So it's very important to recognize and treat depression.
He also urges veterans with hearing loss to get treated.
Unaddressed hearing loss is a huge risk factor for Alzheimer's disease.
There are new treatments for Alzheimer's disease and more in the pipeline.
There's a very rich pipeline, which means that there are new medications that are moving toward potential approval for not just Alzheimer's disease, but for the psychiatric or neuropsychiatric symptoms of Alzheimer's disease that are the most common and often most impactful. Agitation is one of them. Psychosis, where patients start to hallucinate or become paranoid or accusatory. Depression in Alzheimer's disease is also very impactful because if we don't recognize and treat it, that can accelerate the progression of Alzheimer's disease. And then the last one, which is probably the least appreciated, very, very common in Alzheimer's disease, is apathy, lack of motivation. I call it being a serious couch potato.
He's involved with the research and development of new treatments for Alzheimer's disease and its symptoms.
I'm a sought-after consultant in these areas. Help to design the studies and then wait for the results and help to interpret the results and help to publish the results and share them educationally with the field. So I really have my finger on the pulse of what's happening nationally.